Welcome to the Clip Studio Paint EX Fundamentals video course by Pact Publishing. My name is Liz Staley, and I've been using Clip Studio Paint for about 5 years now, back when it was called Manga Studio 4. Clip Studio is my absolute favorite software to draw with, and I recommend it to every digital artist I know. I have written 2 books about this software, both published by Pact Publishing. The first one is Mastering Manga Studio 5, and the second one is Manga Studio EX5 Cookbook. I've also hosted webinars with Smith Micro software, and I have demonstrated Clip Studio Paint at many conventions over the years. I use Clip Studio in all my art, including my online comic, which can be found at www.adrastiscomic.com. Clip Studio Paint is a comic and illustration creation software. Unlike some graphics software, it has tools specifically for drawing digitally, with a focus on creating comics. Some of these tools include perspective rulers, custom brush creation, comic panel tools, word balloons, and 3D figures integrated directly into the program. You can create any sort of digital art in this program. Though it's made with tools for comic creators, you don't have to just make comics with it. Digital painters, illustrators, character designers, and all other digital artists can take advantage of this powerful software. In this course, we will learn how to use some features of Clip Studio Paint EX that will help you speed up your workflow. The course contains 5 sections. In the first section, we'll create some custom brushes that will help us draw our illustrations faster and more efficiently. This will also give you a good basis for creating custom brushes on your own later. This section will also cover using layer masks, a powerful tool all on their own. In the second section, we will learn about using vectors. Clip Studio Paint allows us to draw in raster or vector modes, and even use both in the same file. We'll cover everything you need to know to effectively use the vector drawing tools in your own art. In the third section, we will start covering how to use Clip Studio Paint's ruler options. In this section, we'll cover the basic rulers, including straight rulers, curves, and the ruler pen. We'll also touch on some specialty rulers, like the symmetry ruler and concentric circles. In the fourth section, we will learn about the powerhouse of Clip Studio Paint, perspective rulers. The lessons in this section will cover 1-point, 2-point, and 3-point perspective. In the fifth section, we will learn about another powerful and unique feature of Clip Studio Paint. In this section, we'll talk about using 3D objects in our projects, either as reference to draw from or as characters and backgrounds. We'll pose and customize characters and learn how to move the 3D camera. By the end of this course, you will be able to use the more advanced drawing tools in Clip Studio Paint. These tools are a complement to the pencil and pen tools and will allow you to draw in your own preferred style faster and more efficiently once you incorporate them into your workflow. The materials you will need for this course are a computer and a copy of Clip Studio Paint. A graphics tablet, such as any of the ones made by Wacom, is also recommended. This course is aimed for advanced beginner to intermediate users. If you've never used a graphics software in your life, it may not give you quite enough information on its own to turn you into a digital art guru. But if you know what layers and pencil tools are, then this course will help you explore the features that will help you draw the way you do on paper, but with digital tools. Those switching from other graphics software, such as Adobe Photoshop, will find this course will help them get familiar with the workflow of Clip Studio Paint. If you're a digital artist who's new to Clip Studio Paint or already a Clip Studio Paint user who just wants to learn more, this course will help you realize the full potential of this amazing program. Let's take this learning journey together and create some amazing comics and illustrations in Clip Studio Paint EX together. Hi, and welcome to Section 1. In this section, we are going to learn about creating custom brushes, using some of the specialty selection tools available in Clip Studio Paint, and creating and editing layer masks. In this first video, we're going to create a simple brush with a unique look. This gritty inking brush will provide a textured look to your drawings. It's simple to do and a great introduction to making brushes before we get into the more complicated ones in the next few videos. In this video, we'll copy an existing subtool, then change a few settings to get the look we want. Custom brushes are powerful and fun to make and can simplify many of your everyday drawing processes. Once you know how to make them, you may not be able to stop. Let's get started. To make the brush in this lesson, we're going to need to download a brush from the Smith Micro site and import it so that the proper brush tip material is present in the materials library. You can find the brush at my.smithmicro.com/manga-studio-ex-5-free-content.html. The brush is listed as dry bleeding flat watercolor. Once you have downloaded and unzipped the brush, import it by clicking on the icon in the Subtool palette and clicking on Import Subtool. For more detailed instructions on importing brushes, see video number 5 of this section. Let's get started on making our brush. In Clip Studio Paint, click on the Pen tools. Then select the G pen. We are going to duplicate this pen to use as a basis for our finished gritty inking pen. In the bottom right corner of the Subtool palette, you'll see an icon that looks like a little piece of paper. Click on that to create a copy of the G pen tool. In the window that pops up, we'll put in a name for the tool we're about to make. Click on OK when complete. Now you'll see we have our new tool here. In the Tool Property palette, click on the wrench icon in the bottom right corner. This opens our brush options in the Subtool Detail screen. This is where we can customize our brush however we wish. By the way, you may wish to have an empty canvas open to test your brush as we go. Click on Brush Tip in the left-hand side to get started. Now, next to Tip Shape, click on the Material button. This allows us access to the Materials library, specifically to the materials marked to be used as brush tips. Click in this box to add a tip shape. From the Materials screen, we're going to select the material named Droplet 1. You may have to search for it. Click on the material to make it selected, and then click on OK. Once the Droplet 1 material is loaded, click on the Add Brush Tip Shape icon again. We're going to layer 2 brush tip shapes on top of each other to achieve our desired look. This time, choose the dry bleeding flat watercolor material. Click on it to select it, and then click on OK again. Now we're back in the brush tip settings. At any point in time, you can test your brush on our open canvas. This is what it looks like so far. From here, to complete our look, we're going to set our thickness to 70. You can either do so with the arrows, with the slider, or by clicking here and typing in the number. Set the direction of applying to vertical. This changes the direction that our materials are being laid on the brush tip. Now, next to thickness on the right-hand side, click on this little square icon. This opens up more options that we can set. For instance, if we wanted to change the thickness based on the tilt of the stylus, or at a random value, we can check on them. For this tool, we're going to check the box next to pen pressure. We want the thickness to vary depending on how hard or how soft we press the stylus when we draw. Now you can see here that we have a graph. This allows us to fine-tune the settings for the pen pressure that we turned on a moment ago. This curve changes how our pen pressure reacts. For instance, if we move all the way up to 100% and then draw, we will get consistently very thick lines. If we change it down here, you can see what a difference it makes. For this pen, we're going to make a very slight curve up, like this. It doesn't have to be exact. While we're still in this screen, we're going to turn random on. Check the box, and then we're going to set a minimum value of 13. Again, you can use the slider, these arrows, or just click and type. Now you can see that our brush is starting to get a more and more textured look. Now we're going to adjust some of the settings under direction. So this changes the direction that our brush shapes will be laid down in. First, make sure the button next to direction of pen is filled in. Then check the random checkbox and set the degree of effect to 10. Back here in the brush tip settings, we're going to check the box labeled Adjust Brush Density by Gap. So now if we use the pen again, you can see how much different it looks from over here. One final thing, under the anti-aliasing, we're going to set the anti-aliasing to none. Now instead of getting a blurry effect, we have a much harder look to our brush. In this video, we've created a fairly simple custom inking pen by changing only the brush tip settings. In the next video, we'll create some custom brush tip materials and learn how to make a brush that scatters multiple materials at once to give a random effect. I'll meet you there. Hi, and welcome back. In the previous video, we created a textured inking brush. In this video, we're going to learn how to create a brush that will help us automate an otherwise repetitive drawing task. In this case, it's creating broken glass shards for an illustration. So let's get started. To start with, we need to make some glass shards. Let's open a blank canvas, preferably at least 300 dpi. We also want this to be a transparent canvas rather than having a paper color. Using your preferred drawing method, draw the outlines of a jagged glass shard shape. I'm using the polyline tool. Create a new layer beneath the outline. I'll use the polyline lasso tool and select the shape. Then, once I have it selected, I'll fill it with white with the paint bucket. If you have white selected, you can just click on the paint icon down here to fill your selection. Now we need to lower the opacity of the white fill layer to 50%. This way, when we use the brush, the inside of the glass shards will be semi-transparent and make it look more like glass. I'm going to create several more shapes, each on their own layer. Also, I'm going to merge these two layers so that they are one layer. So now you can see I've made more glass shapes. Each one is on its own layer and has a 50% opacity white fill. Now we can start actually saving these for our brush. We're going to turn off the visibility on all but one layer. Now we could have all these glass shards on the same layer and make a brush with one brush tip, but we'll get more randomization from this method, so bear with it for another minute. With our visible layer active, we're going to click on Edit, and then Register Image as Material. In the Material Property window, name your new material. Select the brush folder under Image Material to store it in. Also, we're going to click the box under the material image that says Use for Brush Tip. This tells the program that we want to be able to use this when we customize brush tips. Add tags to the image that is easily found later. Once you're done, click on OK. Repeat these steps for the rest of the glass shard shapes. Now that we have our shapes all saved, we can start to build our glass shard brush. First, we're going to select any brush and make a copy of it. I'm going to use the G pen under the Pen tool. Make sure that the G pen is selected, and then click on the icon to create a copy. We'll name our duplicate tool Glass Shards. Click on OK. In the Tool Property palette, click on the icon down at the bottom that looks like two wrenches. This will open the Subtool Detail palette. Click on Brush Size on the left-hand side. Then, to the right of the brush size slider, we're going to click on this down arrow icon. This allows us more control over the brush size parameters and allows us to change the conditions that change the size of the brush when we use it. We can make the brush size change based on how fast we move the stylus by checking velocity, or we can make it change by the tilt of the stylus. We can even set it to randomly change. But the only option we need for this pen tool is the pen pressure. Make sure this box is checked. Now we're going to set the value to 15. You can do this either by moving the slider or by typing in the numbers manually. After changing the minimum value to 15, we also need to change this graph down here. We can do this by clicking on the purple handle and dragging it around. For this brush, we're going to make this a concave arc. Something like that. It doesn't have to be exact. Now, over here, we're going to click on the anti-aliasing. Make sure that the middle option is selected, which it already is. Now is the time to really make this glass brush. Click on Brush Tip, and now we're going to click on Material. We'll click here to add the tip shape. This is how we're going to load those glass shards we made earlier. Let's search for them. You can select multiple materials at once by holding down Shift or Control on your keyboard and then clicking. Now you can see that our glass shards are loaded in our tip shape. Now we're going to click on the box to the right of the slider for the thickness settings. Now we'll check the box next to Random. We're going to change a few more options that deal with randomization so we can get the look from this brush that these are random shards when we use it. Set the minimum value of the random to 65. Now we're going to set the direction to random as well. This will make the brush rotate the shards we loaded in, instead of them always facing the same way. Click on the icon next to direction, and then check the random box. Make sure that the degree of effect is set to 100. Now let's go back to the left-hand side of our subtool details and click on the stroke option. Find the gap option. This controls how far apart the individual shapes of the brush tip are spaced. We're going to check the furthest apart setting by clicking on this icon with only one circle in it. It is marked Fixed. Now we'll use the slider and set the value to 150. You can also type the number in here. You can see as we've been changing our options that our preview of our brush has been changing up here. Notice how far apart the glass shard shapes are. Now for our last randomization option. Set the repeat method to random. This takes the brush tips and shuffles them around at random instead of repeating them one after the other in the same order. Essentially, we just set our brush tips on shuffle. Now it's time to test our brush. One thing I love about Clip Studio Paint is the ability to use the brush at any time during customization. Leave the Subtool Details palette open and just use the brush on an open canvas. This is especially handy when making your own custom brushes because you can test the options out as you work. I love the look of this brush, so I think it's done. You can see that wherever the glass shards layer, they change the color of what's beneath them. In this video, we made a random brush with custom materials for brush tip shapes. In the next video, we're going to learn about the ribbon repeat options and use it to make a leaf brush. See you there! Hi, and welcome back. In the previous video, we learned how to make a broken glass brush using custom brush tip materials and the randomized options for brush creation. In this video, we are going to learn how to make a brush that will simplify a repetitive drawing task. Specifically, we're going to make a brush that will draw bunches of leaves for us to make trees and bushes. But you could use this same technique to make a brush that draws lightning or even a crowd of people. The possibilities are limitless once you know which options to use, so let's take a look. Like in our last lesson, the first step is to draw what will become our brush tip. We want to make this wider than it is tall. Draw your leaves like you're drawing the very top of a tree or a bush, and then fill them in with white as I have done here. You'll see why we're filling them in with white instead of leaving it black and transparent once we have the brush all together. After turning off any visible paper layers or other fills and ensuring that both the leaf outlines and the white fill are on the same layer, click on Edit and then Register Image as Material. After turning off any visible paper layers or other fills and ensuring that both the leaf outlines and the white fill are on the same layer, click on Edit and then Register Image as Material. Now we're going to save our material. Just like in the previous video, we'll add a material name. Then we'll click on Use for Brush Tip Shape. Open the Image Material folder, and then select the Brush category. Finally, add a few search tags to help you find this later. Click on OK when you're done. We're going to copy one of the decoration tools as a base for this pen. Plus, I want this brush to be in this folder for organizational purposes. Once we've clicked on the decoration tool, we'll choose the vegetation category. Now click on Grass A, and we'll create a copy with the icon at the bottom of the palette. Name the new brush something descriptive. I'm going to use Leaf Tops. Click on OK when you're done. Now click on the wrench icon in the bottom of the Tool Property palette. This will open our Subtool Detail palette with all our brush options. First, let's click on Ink on the left-hand side. Make sure the opacity is set at 100 and that the combine mode is normal. Click on Anti-Aliasing on the left-hand side. For this brush, we want our options set to None. Just like our previous brush, we're going to click on the Brush Tip options. We need to put our custom material as the brush tip, but since we copied the Grass A brush, there were already materials set as the brush tip. That's okay, we can delete them. Click on one and click on the trash can, or to delete multiple at a time, click on one, go to the final one, hold down Shift on your keyboard, click again, and then click on the trash can to delete. Now that we have those materials cleared out, we can load our leaf shape. Click on the Add Tip Shape box. Now select the leaf shape that you made in the beginning. I'm searching for mine. Click on the material once you found it and then click on OK. Now make sure that the thickness is set to 100. Next, we're going to click on Stroke over in the left-hand side. You are going to see an option labeled Ribbon. Check the box next to it. Now, your brush may be showing like mine is, where it's rotated. We don't want this brush to behave like this, so we're going to need to go back into the brush tip settings and change the direction. So here, we'll change the direction to 100. You can see that it's rotated from being vertical to horizontal. This is how we want our brush to show. Next to direction, let's click on the icon. Alright, let's go back to stroke and talk about ribbon for a second. What this option does is make our brush material roll out and repeat like it's a ribbon on a spool. Imagine our leaf design is actually printed on a piece of ribbon. This is what this option does. Let's open up a new canvas and test it out, and you'll see what I mean. So as you can see, it repeats the design over and over again. Using this tool, we can make a tree. I find the best way to make trees with this tool is to start from the outside. Work in a clockwise motion, overlapping. Now go in a little bit more, and continue working. Keep going until you get all the way into the middle. Do a couple little swirls with the brush to fill in any gaps. So now you can see we have a great final image with lots of detail. This same option can be used to make many other brushes, such as this rainbow brush. Here's one that's a chain. You can also make lace. These are all done with that ribbon option. In this video, we have learned how to use the ribbon option to make a brush with a repeating pattern. In the next video, we're going to learn 2 methods for importing new brushes. I'll see you then. Hi, welcome back. In the previous video, we learned how to create a brush using the ribbon feature. In this video, we are going to learn 2 methods for importing third-party brushes. These might be brushes that you downloaded from the Clip Studio or Smith Micro sites, and they have lots and lots of free brushes there, as well as brushes you can purchase for a small fee. Or they may be brushes from another user or a Gumroad store. I love getting brushes from other Clip Studio users. There are 2 simple ways to import brushes into Clip Studio Paint. We're going to go over both of them now. One is great for importing one brush, and the other method can be used to import multiple brushes or one brush at a time. Let's take a look. First, we're going to learn how to import brushes one at a time. This is a great method if you have just one brush you want to add to the program. I have downloaded the Scales brush from the Clip Studio site. Once we've downloaded the brush, you may need to unzip the file to get to the actual brush file. The brushes from the Clip Studio site do require unzipping before use. I've unzipped the brush file and you can see it here in this folder. Let's import the file now so that it's ready to go. I want to import this scale brush into the pen tools. Select the tool that you want to place the brush in. Now click on the icon in the top left of the subtool palette. Click on the Import Subtool menu option. Next, navigate to where your brushes are. Once you have found your brush, select the file. Then click on Open. Now your new brush is imported and ready to use. Some sites may give you several tools at one time. Instead of importing those brushes one at a time, we can put them all in a subtool category at once. You can use this method to easily install one brush at a time as well. This is the fastest method of installing brushes. First, we'll go to our Clip Studio interface and select the subtool folder that we want to import our brushes into. I'm going to continue to importing brushes into the pen tool. Next, you'll need to open the folder your brush files are saved in. I'm on a Windows operating system, so I'm looking at my files in the Windows Explorer folders. You want to be able to see the files in their folder location and the subtool folder in Clip Studio Paint at the same time. Select the brushes that you wish to import. You can select multiple at a time by either holding down Shift and clicking or holding down Control on Windows and clicking. I'm going to select these 3 to import. Once you have them selected, simply left-click with your mouse and hold the button down. Then drag the files until your mouse is over the subtool folder in Clip Studio Paint. Release the mouse button. Now you can see that our tools have been imported into Clip Studio Paint and are ready to use. In this video, we have imported third-party brushes using 2 different methods. In the next video, we're going to switch to using selection tools, such as the selection pen and shrink selection. See you there. Hi there, and welcome back. In the previous video, we learned how to import third-party brushes. In this video, we are going to learn how to use some of Clip Studio's selection tools. Now, we're not going to be going over rectangle marquee tools or magic wands here. Most graphics software have those sorts of tools. But Clip Studio Paint has several selection tools that are unique to the program. We'll learn how to use these and make even faster selections. So let's go ahead and get started. There are 3 specialty selection tools that we'll be covering in this lesson. As I said before, we won't be covering lasso tools or marquee tools or magic wands in this lesson because they are available in other programs and fairly self-explanatory. What we're going to cover instead are the selection pen, the clear selection tool, and the shrink selection tool. For this lesson, have an image open. Black and white line art might work best. Black and transparent line art will work even better. All of these tools can be found under the Marquee tool. You'll see them here in the subtool palette. First, we'll use the selection pen. This is a very simple selection tool. To use the selection pen, simply click and drag with your mouse or stylus. The pen highlights where we've drawn with it. When we let go of the mouse or ease off the stylus pressure, the highlighted area is selected. This can be a very precise way to make selections since you can see exactly where you are selecting. Also, this tool can be set to be pressure sensitive by opening the Subtool Detail palette, going to Brush Size, clicking on the icon here next to Brush Size, and turning on the pen pressure. Now, if we use the stylus, we can make thicker or thinner selections depending on how hard we press. This makes it easy to make very, very precise selections. Now I'm going to make a selection so that I can show you how to use the clear selection tool. I'll make a quick selection here with our selection pen. Now that I have a selection made, it's the perfect time to learn how to use the clear selection tool. This tool is very helpful when making more complex selections or deselecting areas inside of an already active selection. To use it, you must have an active selection already made. Just like with the selection pen, we'll simply use the mouse or stylus to draw over our area to deselect, and it will be highlighted in green. Once we release the mouse or stylus, the area that we highlighted will be deselected. Pretty easy, huh? Now let's talk about the shrink selection tool. For this tool, we'll need something to select that has transparency, like the line art for this drawing here. Let's say we wanted to select all the rivets on this mechanical horse. We could get the magic wand tool and click each one individually, or we could use the shrink selection tool. To use this tool, we'll hold down the mouse or stylus and draw around the area. I drew all around the face of this horse. Once I joined the line back up with where I started and let go, any areas within that selection area I drew out that were completely surrounded by transparency were selected. You can see that any lines that meet up with other lines haven't been selected. This tool is very handy for selecting lots of small details or selecting the outside of a character, just like this. If we wanted to select the outside of this drawing, we could take the shrink selection tool and draw around the horse, join up and let go, and you can see that now we have a selection all around the outside of the horse. In this video, we have learned about 3 unique ways to make selections. In the next video, we're going to learn how to create and edit layer masks. We'll use some of the techniques that we learned in this video to do that too. See you there. Hi there. In the previous video, we learned about 3 selection tools unique to Clip Studio Paint. In this video, we are going to learn all about creating and editing layer masks. What is a layer mask? Keep watching and I'll explain. This drawing has a layer mask on it. If I turn the layer mask off by right-clicking on the layer mask and deselecting Enable Mask, now you can see the area that was being hidden by the mask. Layer masks are a feature that allows us to hide parts of a layer without erasing them for good. We can fine-tune a drawing this way, or mask out parts of a background that are behind a character, but save the background to be reused later. Think of a layer mask like a Halloween mask. If you were to put a Halloween mask on, your face would still be there behind it, it just can't be seen. So, how do we create one? Well, let's learn that right now. Obviously, you'll need some sort of image to create a mask on. Once you have that, the easiest way to create a layer mask is to click on the Create Layer Mask icon in the Layer palette. Once we've clicked it, you'll see the layer mask next to the layer, right here. Ensure the layer mask is selected by looking for the box around it. Once the mask is selected, we can use it to hide parts of the drawing. To hide areas with the mask, select the eraser tool and use it as you normally would. This tells the mask to hide these areas, but they're not being deleted forever. Want to bring that part of the drawing back? Select a pen or a brush tool. Want to bring that part of the drawing back? Select a pen or a brush tool. Draw with this tool over the hidden content and it will come back. If we look in the layer palette, we can see in the thumbnail of the layer mask that the hidden areas are in black and the visible areas are in white. You can also make a soft fade. 2 different ways to do this. Also, to make a soft fade, you can use the soft eraser tool. So you can see now that the drawing fades out softly, instead of just being a hard edge. A gradient tool of white to transparent can also be used. For instance, we can mask this entire drawing by selecting the entire area and hitting clear. You'll see that our entire layer mask is now black, indicating that everything on this layer is hidden. Next, we'll select the gradient tool and use foreground to transparent. Now we have a ghostly fading in image. Another note is that it doesn't matter what color you use to show the drawing under the mask. The mask will automatically read it. For instance, I can select this gold color. However, if we drop the opacity of our tool, like this, and then draw, you'll see that again we get that slightly faded look. We can also make layer masks by using selections. I'm going to use the selection pen and make a very quick selection. For instance, let's say that we didn't want fringe on this scarf anymore. Now we can go to Layer, Layer Mask, Mask Selection. Clip Studio automatically generates a layer mask that hides the content inside of the selection. We can also use Layer, Layer Mask, Mask Outside Selection to save all of the content within the selection and mask everything outside. Want to mask outside of the selection quickly? Select the area that you want to be visible in your layer mask. With the selection active, click on the Create Layer Mask icon at the bottom of the layer palette. With the press of one button, we've quickly masked out the areas we didn't want visible. And we can click on the layer mask and refine it as we need to. Layer masks have endless applications, and I hope you'll find them to be as useful as I have. In this section, we have learned how to customize brushes for a variety of tasks that will simplify our drawing process. We have also learned how to import brushes from third parties, learned a few new ways to make selections, and learned how to use layer masks. In the next section, we're going to learn all about using vectors in Clip Studio Paint. I hope I'll see you there! Hi, and welcome to Using Vectors. In this section, we are going to learn about creating and working with vectors in Clip Studio Paint. We're going to start off with the basics. We'll learn how to make a vector layer and how to start making vector lines. Then we'll learn how to adjust our vectors before we start adding and deleting control points. Finally, we'll learn how to scale and rotate our vector lines. In this video, we're going to start with the very basics of working in vectors. To use vectors in Clip Studio Paint, you'll have to make a vector layer. Let's get started. Let's start with an open canvas in Clip Studio. DPI and dimensions don't really matter for this lesson, so just use something you're comfortable with. One way to make a new vector layer is to click on Layer, New Layer, Vector Layer. Enter a name for the new layer. Choose an option from the Expression Color drop-down menu. If applicable, you can choose a blending mode as well. Click on OK, and the new layer will be created. You can see it here in the layer palette. Alternately, you can click on the new vector layer icon in the layer palette. This generates a new layer with default settings. You can rename it by double-clicking on the new layer. In this video, we have learned the very easy process of creating a vector layer, the first step in beginning to work with vectors in Clip Studio Paint. In the next video, we'll discuss the different ways you can draw on vector layers. See you there. Hi, and welcome back to our course. In the previous video, we learned how to create vector layers in Clip Studio Paint. It's a small step, but it's essential for starting to work with vectors. In this video, we are going to start drawing on one of those vector layers. We'll cover a few different ways to make our mark. Let's dive right in. Now that we have our vector layers made, we're ready to start drawing. The easiest way to draw on a vector layer is to literally grab a pen tool and draw. I've made a line here, and at first it looks just like a line on any other layer, but if I select the Operation Object tool and click on it, you can see the control points that Clip Studio automatically made for us when we drew our line. This is the difference between raster and vector art. Unlike raster art, vectors aren't made up of pixels, but rather are made up of lines and curves that can be manipulated. In addition to using the pen and the brush tools and pencil tools, we can also use the direct draw tools. You'll find them under the figure tool. We can make a straight line. We can make a polyline. We can even make shapes, such as a rectangle and a circle. In this video, we have learned the different ways that we can make marks on vector layers. In the next video, we are going to manipulate those vector lines. We'll see you there. Hi, and welcome back. In the previous video, we learned how to draw on vector layers. In this video, we are going to learn how to take the lines we made in the last video and manipulate them. One of the great things about working in vector is that our lines aren't made up of pixels, but rather made up of control points. We can adjust these control points after we've drawn a line. Let's see how it's done. So here we have the lines we made in the previous lesson. Now let's see how easy it is to change these lines around. One way we can move our control points is by selecting the Operation Object tool. Then, click on the line that you want to manipulate. The yellow boxes that you see are the control points. When we get close to these control points, you'll see that the cursor changes. Click and drag, and you can move the control point and manipulate your line. There are also several other tools that you can use to change your vector lines. All of these tools can be found in the Correct Line tool. For instance, there's actually a control point tool. You can do several different things with this tool, but one of them is Move Control Point. With this, you'll see that when you hover over the line, automatically the control points will come up. You don't have to click to select the line. So for instance, once we get near this line, even though we never made a selection with it, we can still manipulate these control points. There are several other tools in this set of subtools that will also help us manipulate our lines. For instance, we can use the Pinch Vector Line. This helps us to redraw our line. You can see that as I'm holding down the mouse and dragging around, it's pinching our line. So you can use this to push your line around to a new shape. You can also use the Redraw Vector Line tool and push your line around. All I'm doing is clicking and holding and moving the mouse, and it redraws this line. So I can even use it to change the straight polyline that we drew. With these tools, you also have several options for changing the line width of your vector lines. For instance, we can use the Correct Line Width tool. I'll make this a little bit smaller. You'll see that there are several different options for this tool here. I'm going to use Thicken Width for right now. Simply click and drag. And you can see that the areas that you went over are now thicker. So you can continue to do this with lines. You can also make them thinner, just by using Thin Width. You can also use the Redraw Vector Line Width tool. For this, I'll make this a larger brush size. Going over the line changes the width. And you'll see that however large I make this, it changes the line width. So this is how you can easily get a nice thick and thin transition with your hand-drawn vector lines. We'll go over the rest of the subtools in the Correct Line category in the next video. In this video, we have learned how to adjust our vector lines. In the next video, we will learn how to add and delete control points. See you then. Hello, and welcome back. In the previous video, we learned how to manipulate the control points and the thickness of a vector line. In this video, we're going to learn how to add and delete control points from our vectors. This gives us even more control over how our lines look in our finished drawing. Let's go ahead and get started. So as you remember, we made these vector lines, and now we want to further refine them. First of all, let's learn how to delete control points by refining our line we made with the pen tool. We'll click on it with the Operation Object tool so that you can see the control points. Each of these boxes is a control point. You'll notice that there are a lot of control points on our free-handed line. This can make refining a free-handed line pretty difficult, as moving one or two can cause the line to become bumpy. To delete a control point, click on it to make it selected. Then right-click and choose Delete Control Point. As you can see, this can be a tedious process when a line has so many control points. To further refine this line, we can use the Simplify Vector Line tool under the Correct Line tools. Select the tool, and then run the tool over the line to be simplified. Now if we click on it with the Object tool, you'll see that we have far less control points. This makes it easier to manipulate the line and keep it smooth. Now let's use this straight line here to learn how easy it is to add control points. Adding a control point is just as easy as deleting a control point. All you have to do is right-click the line where you want the control point. Select Add Control Point. And now we have a third control point on this straight line. You may remember the Control Point tool in the Correct Line tools. With this tool, we can also add control points and delete control points very easily. For instance, if I put this on Add Control Point in the Tool Properties, and then go to the line and click, now we have a fourth control point on this line. We can also use this tool to delete control points. For instance, we'll delete this control point simply by hovering over it and clicking with the mouse. With this tool, you can also switch the corner of a control point. Now what this means is, say on these control points here, the lines are going in and out at right angles. They're always going to be sharp. Unless we use the switch corner, we'll click on this control point here. And now you can see that we have a curve where we had a straight line before. We can also use this tool to cut a line. For that, we'll select Cut Line, and then click on where we want to cut. Now, you'll see that we actually have an entirely different line. Now let's say that we cut these lines apart and we wanted to join them back together. All we have to do is move this control point Now let's say we had split this into two lines and we want to join them back together. All we have to do is move one of the end control points over the other end. Then we can use the Connect Vector Line subtool. Use the tool and run over the ends of the line. Now we have one continuous line again. In this video, we have learned how to add and delete control points. In the next video, we are going to learn how to scale and rotate vector lines. We'll see you there. Hello, and welcome back to the course. In the previous video, we learned how simple it is to delete and add control points to our vector lines in Clip Studio Paint. In this video, we are going to learn two more ways to manipulate our vectors. We'll learn how to rotate our lines and how to scale them. Let's jump right in. Scaling and rotating our lines is very easy. And since they're vector, we can scale them any amount without losing the quality of the line. Let's see how easy it is to scale these lines. First, we'll select the Operation Object tool. Then I'm going to click on this rectangle. Our selected line has a bounding box around it that you may be familiar with already. So to rotate the line, move the mouse cursor to the blue dot at the top of the bounding box. When the cursor becomes a curved arrow, you can click and drag to rotate the line, just like this. To rotate in 45-degree increments, hold down the Shift key on your keyboard. Once you've rotated the line to the desired position, release the mouse button. To scale the line, move the mouse cursor to one of the handles around the perimeter of the bounding box. When the cursor becomes a double-headed arrow, like this, you can click and drag to scale the line. Different handles on the perimeter scale the line differently, as you can see here. To scale the line but constrain the proportions, hold down the Shift key on the keyboard and drag. To select multiple vectors to scale or rotate at once, click on the first one to be selected. Then hold down the Shift key on the keyboard and continue selecting lines until all desired lines are selected. You can then rotate and scale all these lines together. In this section, we have learned the many ways to work with vectors. These techniques will give you the basics of working in this graphics format. With vectors, you can make very precise lines that can be adjusted and scaled easily. We learned how to make a vector layer to start using vectors. We also learned the different ways to draw on a vector layer. Then we learned all about adjusting our vector lines, including how to add and delete control points and how to scale and rotate lines. The next section is pretty exciting because we're going to start learning about rulers. We'll learn about basic rulers as well as some specialty rulers coming up. See you then! Hi, and welcome to Using Rulers. In the last section, we learned about using vectors. In this section, we are going to go over some of the ruler tools in Clip Studio Paint. For this section specifically, we're going to cover the ruler tools that are not perspective rulers. Perspective rulers will be covered in detail in the next section. In this section, though, we'll be learning about the basic rulers, like linear, curve, and figure rulers. We'll also learn about the special rulers, like concentric circles and parallel lines. Then we'll learn about the symmetry ruler, and also how to use the streamline tools and saturated line tools to create other special looks. In this first video, we're going to learn about the basic rulers. This includes the linear, curve, figure, and guide rulers, as well as the ruler pen. This includes the linear, curve, figure, and guide rulers, as well as the ruler pen. Now, many of these rulers have an equivalent tool in the Direct Draw subtool group, but personally, I like to use rulers instead of the straight line tools, because then I can have a more organic feel to the inking. Now, many of these rulers have an equivalent tool in the Direct Draw subtool group, but personally, I like to use rulers instead of line tools, because then I can have a more organic feel to my inking, and use pen pressure to get thick and thin parts of my line. That's one of the advantages that rulers have over the line and shape tools. Anyway, let's get started. Let's start off with an open canvas we can play with these rulers on. Dimensions and DPI don't really matter right now, so use whatever size you feel comfortable with. To access the ruler tools for all of the videos in the next two sections, first select the Figure tool from the toolbox. For this video, we'll select the Ruler group of subtools. For this video, we're going to learn to use the first 4 tools and the guide tool. Let's start off by selecting the linear ruler tool. Next, we'll go to our canvas and click to add a starting point. Make sure to hold down the mouse button. Now we'll drag until we have the ruler at the length and angle we want it, and we can release the mouse button to complete our ruler. Now we have a line on our screen, and it will probably show as green unless you've changed the ruler preferences in your program. This line we made acts just like if you had a ruler and you held it to a piece of paper so you could draw a straight line. If we select one of our pen tools and draw near the line, you'll see that we have a straight line that follows our green ruler line. If the drawing tool you selected isn't snapping to the ruler, make sure that the Snap to Ruler icon in the command bar is active. Most of the time, ruler problems come from not having the snapping turned on. Now, let's talk about the curve ruler. The curve ruler has some options we can select down here in the tool property palette, as you can see. For instance, this first icon turns this into a polyline straight line ruler. If we select it and then click, 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 and double click to end our line, you'll see that we have a zigzag ruler made of a few segments of straight lines. But we can also use the curve ruler to make rounded lines, kind of like having a set of digital French curves. There are 3 different options for how to make curves, and each one draws a little differently. Personally, my preference is the spline option, which is the second icon here in the tool property palette for this tool. To make a spline curve, we'll click to start our ruler. Then we'll click again where we want our first curve. As we move the cursor after our second click, you can see that the line curves. Another click will put down another control point for another curve. When we've finished, we double click to end the ruler. You also have the option of quadratic Bezier, which works kind of the same as the spline, but as you can see, instead of the next control point creating the middle of our curve, instead it creates a handle that our curve then bends relative to it. You can also use the cubic Bezier. To use this option, click to start the ruler. Then, when you click for your second point, if you just click and move, you'll create a straight line. But if you click and hold down while dragging, you will create a curve. By the way, if you need to edit a ruler after you've created it, you can use the Operation Object tool. Click on the ruler. Then, just as with vectors in the previous section, the ruler can be changed and then used with one of the drawing tools of your choice. Next, we'll learn about the figure ruler. The figure ruler allows us to draw rectangles, circles, and polygons easily. If we select it, you can see, of course, that there are some options in the tool property palette. Let's start off with the rectangle. These are very easy to use, just like using the shape tools in the Direct Draw tool group. To draw your shape, simply click and hold down while dragging. Once you've finished, release the mouse button. If the Adjust Angle After Fixed box is checked in the tool property, then you'll be able to rotate the ruler after it's created. Here you'll see the Adjust Angle After Fixed checkbox. So if we choose the Ellipse option under Figure, we will of course create a circle. But let's take a look at the Polygon Figure option. This is a great ruler because it's pretty versatile if you know where to look for the options. Click on the icon that looks like 2 wrenches in the bottom right corner of the Tool Properties palette to open the subtool details. Now, click on Figure in the left-hand side. You'll see that you have the same options of rectangle, circle, and polygon, but there's another slider here under those options. This slider allows us to change the number of vertices the shape ruler has. So if we set it to 6 and then make our ruler, we'll get a hexagon. But if we set it to 3 and make our ruler, we get a triangle instead. You can make more complex polygons with this option. Okay, let's close the subtool details and talk about the ruler pen. This tool, again, makes a ruler, but it makes a ruler out of whatever you draw with the tool. So we can make a shape like this, or maybe write a letter, and we'll have a custom-made ruler. As you can see, if we select a drawing tool, we can have it snap to this ruler and follow what we drew. Finally, let's talk about a special sort of ruler called the guide. To make a guide, select the tool, and then choose the location of the guide. Click and drag, then release to create a guide. Guides are just that, they're guidelines. They can only be horizontal or vertical. So even if we try to drag one out diagonally, it will only be horizontal or vertical. Usually, I use guides for positioning things all in the same line, but they also make for a great quick horizontal or vertical ruler since the drawing tools do snap to them. In this video, we have learned about the linear, curve, figure, pen, and guide rulers. In the next video, we're going to learn about the special rulers, like parallel lines and concentric circles. See you there. Hi, and welcome back. In the previous video, we learned about Clip Studio's basic rulers. In this video, we are going to learn about some more rulers. These are more specialized rulers, though, for a variety of effects. These include parallel lines, concentric circles, focus lines, and more. Let's jump right in. Again, we're going to start with an open page. Dimensions and DPI don't matter since we'll just be learning how to use these rulers. Use whatever you're comfortable with to follow along. Select the Figure tool, and then the Ruler subtool. Now we'll select the Special Ruler subtool. Select the Figure tool, then the Ruler subtool group. Now we'll select the Special Ruler subtool. This is the tool we'll be using for this lesson. Once we've selected the Special Ruler subtool, we'll see a drop-down menu here in the Tool Property palette. This allows us to change to the different types of special rulers. Let's start with the Parallel Line Ruler. Click to select the option that you would like to use. To use the Parallel Line Ruler, click and drag where you want the ruler to go, and then release the mouse. If you don't get these rulers exactly where you want them on the first try, just use the Operation Object subtool to adjust them using the handles. You can also change a ruler from active to inactive by clicking on this diamond-shaped control. The ruler will change color, indicating that it's inactive. To activate the ruler again, click on the diamond again. Now that we have a parallel line ruler made, we can go ahead and select a drawing tool to use with it. I'll take a pen tool and draw. So long as the pen tool is set to snap to the special ruler, and the ruler is active, we can only draw lines that are parallel to this ruler, no matter how far away from it we are. I use this ruler a lot for backgrounds, like the face of a building, and also for repeating lines on something like a robot. Next on our drop-down menu, we have the Parallel Curve. If you remember the curve ruler from the previous video, this ruler works just the same way. We can even make a polyline parallel line ruler by selecting the Straight Line option. But we can also choose the Spline option and click out a few control points. to create a curve. Now, if we use this ruler, we'll get parallel curves no matter where on the canvas we draw. The Multiple Curve ruler is used the same way as the curve ruler and the parallel curve ruler. But as you can see, once we double-click to end the ruler, we have some ruler lines that are intersecting. And if we use the pen tool and draw, we can get some pretty neat effects with these curves. Moving along, we have the Focus Line Ruler. The Focus Line Ruler is one of my favorites, and if you're drawing in manga style, it's pretty essential. To use the ruler, choose where in the canvas you want the focus lines to point. Then click and drag with the mouse, and once you release, you'll get a little sunburst-looking ruler. Now we can take our drawing tools and draw focus lines that will radiate out from this point. Now we'll learn about the focus curve. As you can probably guess from the name, this is the same idea as the focus line, but we can make a polyline or a curve. We'll make a curve by clicking out a few control points. When you've finished making your curve, double-click to end the ruler. Now, any lines that you make will follow the curve and will radiate out from the center. Now we have the concentric circle ruler. This is another one of my favorites. I use this on robots and cars quite a bit. It's very handy for drawing wheels. To use this ruler, select it, and then click and drag to create a circle or an oval. To constrain the ruler to a perfect circle, hold down the Shift key on the keyboard. Once you have the circle the way you want it, you can release the mouse to create the ruler. Now, as we use this ruler with a drawing tool, we will create circles that are concentric, like the rings of a bullseye. The final option in the special ruler subtool is a guide ruler, which is just like the guide ruler that we discussed in the previous video. This ruler can only be made as horizontal or vertical. In this video, we have learned the many ruler options available in the special ruler tool. In the next video, we will learn how to create fun designs using the symmetry ruler. See you there. Hi, and welcome back. In the previous video, we learned how to use the special ruler subtools. In this video, we're going to learn about the symmetrical ruler. This is a very special ruler that can take a lot of tedium out of your art process. Let's go see what the symmetrical ruler can do. To demonstrate this ruler, I'm going to use this sketch of a robot design. Now, as you can see, this robot is the same on both sides, so it's symmetrical. We can save a lot of time inking this guy if we use the symmetrical ruler. Select it from the Ruler Tool group. Let's take a look here at the Tool Property palette before we use this ruler. Here you'll see an option called Number of Lines. This controls how many times the ruler mirrors what you're drawing. In a few minutes we'll do something pretty cool with this ruler, but for now we're going to leave it on the lowest number it can have, which is 2. Now we have to find the middle of what we're going to mirror. In this case it's right about here at the chin. Then we can click and drag with the mouse to start creating the ruler. To constrain the ruler to horizontal, vertical, or 45-degree angles, hold down the Shift key on the keyboard. When we have the middle line of the ruler where we want it, we can release to create the ruler. Now we can take a drawing tool and start working on this drawing. Personally, what I like to do is pick the side of the sketch I like best and ink that side. Usually this ends up being the left side, probably because I'm left-handed. So we'll start inking with this pen tool. As we make a mark on the left side, it is mirrored on the right. You can imagine how much easier this makes precise designs like a robot. Let's see what else the symmetry ruler can do. Select it, and let's take a look at the number of lines option. The larger we make this number, the more times Clip Studio will mirror what we're drawing. So we can make designs like kaleidoscopes or mandalas with this tool as well. Let's set the number of lines to 8 and make a ruler again. Now, as you can see, we have something that looks a little more like our focus lines. Now, if we take a drawing tool and start making lines, as we make lines, we get them mirrored as many times as we set the number of lines option. You can make complex patterns using just this ruler. In this video, we have learned how to use the symmetrical ruler. In the next video, we will learn about the streamline tools. See you then! Hi, and welcome back to our course. In the previous video, we learned how to use the symmetrical ruler to create perfectly mirrored designs. In this video, we're going to learn about the streamline group of subtools. We've put these tools in the ruler course because they are grouped with the ruler tools in the program. These tools, as well as the tools we'll cover in the next video, can help you make motion line effects quickly and easily. So let's get started. Again, for this lesson, we'll need an open file. It can be blank if you just want to test how these tools work, and I do recommend doing just that. We can find the Streamline tools by clicking Figure in the toolbox, and then selecting the Streamline category. Now we can see the subtools in this category. Let's select the Scattered Streamline tool and then look at the Tool Property palette. You'll see that we have quite a few options here. Angle controls the angle that the lines are drawn at. Changing the brush size changes the thickness of our lines. Clicking on the plus icon next to this option will also bring up a setting called Disarray. This randomizes the brush size. This setting is also available for other options as well. Gap of line is the amount of space between the lines. Grouping alternately repeats areas where lines are closer and farther apart. Length is how long the lines are drawn. The reference position is the point where the lines will be drawn relative to where we set the guideline for this tool. For instance, if we set the drop-down to starting point, the lines will begin where we set our guide for our tool in a moment. And gap from reference position sets how far from the guideline our lines will be. Use this to get lines that don't all start or end in the same line. Now we can use this tool by setting a guideline. Leaving the current settings, let's click to create one point, and then double-click to create another point. So now you can see that the lines started relative to where we set those points. We can continue editing these lines by selecting the Operation Object tool and then clicking on our reference line. Now we can adjust these, say by shortening the length or making them longer. We can also change the angle either by using the slider or by grabbing the red handles. We can also make our streamlines look more like hand-drawn motion lines by going to the starting and ending option in the Subtool Detail palette. Click on the drop-down menu to the right of the starting and ending option, and then check the box next to brush size. As you can see, this tapers the ends of the lines. Now we can move to the Dark Streamline tool. This tool has the same options as the Scattered Streamline tool. With this tool, we'll learn how to both curve the guideline of our motion lines and how to make the lines themselves curve. To start, let's click on the Make Curve checkbox in the Tool Property palette. Then we'll lay down our guideline for our tool, clicking to add control points along the way. Double-click when finished. Now we'll select the Operation Object tool and select the guideline. I'm going to shorten these lines so that you can see what will happen next. Now, as we adjust the angle of these lines, you can see that the ends of them are following the curve, but they're still straight lines. So what do we do if we want the lines to curve? Simple, we'll just take the Operation Object tool and select the guideline. Then we're going to click and hold on this red line between these two handles. Click and then drag in the middle to create a curve. The lines of our tool will automatically follow this curve that we've created. Next up in our Streamline category of tools is the Gloom tool. If you're an avid manga reader, you'll recognize the effect where a character is sad or gloomy and behind them are a bunch of vertical lines. This tool creates that effect quickly and easily. If we select it, you'll see that it has the same option as the other Streamline tools we've talked about in this video. To demonstrate this tool, I have drawn a gloomy character, and we're going to use this tool to complete the look. I've drawn and inked this character and then put a layer of white behind her, as you can see. This is so that the gloom lines won't show through the lines here. To make the gloom lines, click where the lines will start, then double-click where the lines will end. Clip Studio automatically generates lines based on the settings of the tool. You can also generate gloom lines on a curve. To do this, click to start the line. Then click along the points of the desired curve. Double-click when finished and the lines will be generated. The settings of these lines can be altered by taking the Operation Object tool and clicking to select them. Then adjust the control points or other settings as desired. Finally, we'll talk about the Rain subtool. As you can probably guess, this tool gives us the look of rain. It has the same settings as the other tools we've discussed so far in this video. Click on the canvas to create a starting point. Then double-click on another point to make the ending point. Rain lines will be generated in the program according to the current settings. With a little adjustment, this rain can go from a light shower to a downpour. In this video, we have learned how to use the Streamline tools. In the next video, we'll learn about the Saturated Line tools, which allow us to create focus lines quickly and easily. See you there. Hi, welcome back. In the previous video, we learned how to use the Streamline tools to make action lines and other similar effects. In this video, we are going to learn how to use the Saturated Line tools to quickly make focus lines. Let's jump right in. For this lesson, we'll need a file open of some sort in Clip Studio Paint. I'll be using this drawing to demonstrate these tools, but you can use a blank canvas as well. You'll find the saturated line tools as a category under the Figure tool in the toolbox. Select Figure and then the saturated line category. Now select the Scattered Saturated Line tool. This tool is very easy to use. For instance, let's say we want our focus lines to draw the eye to this character's face. All we have to do is click and drag to create an ellipse around the face. Once we release the tool, the focus lines will automatically be drawn according to the settings of the tool. For descriptions of each of these tool options, please see the previous video about streamlines. The next tool in this category is the Dark Saturated Line tool. This tool works differently in that we can draw a curve with it. For this example, let's say we want the focus lines to come from the left of the image and focus on the character's face again. We'll click to add a starting point, then move and click again, then move and click again, adding points for our curve. Once we've finished making the curve, we'll double-click to end the line. The lines are now generated. You can see how much bolder the default settings of this tool is compared to the previous tool. Now we move to the Dense Saturated Line tool. This tool creates some very dense focus lines with its default settings. It operates just like the Scattered Saturated Line tool by having us click and drag to make a circle around the area we'd like to have focused on. Because the lines in this tool are so dense, personally I like to make my circle guide much larger than I would with the Scattered Line tool. Release the mouse once you have the area you'd like in focus, and the lines will be generated. The next two tools are interesting because instead of having lines focusing in to a central point, these lines start at the center and radiate out. First up, let's check out the Brightness tool. I've switched to a blank canvas as well, so we can see how these work without a drawing in the way. So we've selected the Brightness tool. This tool can add a special effect like a weapon charging up or an explosion. Using it is as easy as using the other tools in this category. Simply click and drag to draw a circle that is as large as you want your brightness lines to be. Once we release the tool, the lines are drawn. This tool by default does many short, scattered lines radiating outward. And finally, we've come to the Burst tool. This tool works just like the Brightness tool. Make a circle and release, and the lines will be drawn. These lines are much longer and thicker than the lines in the Brightness tool by default. Remember that you can adjust the options of any of these tools to customize them to your own style. In this section, we've covered many different tools. We started with the basic rulers like linear and curve, then moved into specialty rulers like focus lines and concentric circles. We also learned about the symmetrical ruler and how to use it to create mirrored designs. Then we talked about two more groups of tools, the streamlines and the scattered lines categories. In the next section, we're going to talk about one of the coolest features in Clip Studio Paint, perspective rulers. Tune in and I'll see you there. Hi, and welcome back. In the previous section, we covered using basic rulers, some more specialized rulers, and using the stream and saturated line tools. In this section, we're going to cover using perspective rulers. Clip Studio Paint has 1, 2, and 3-point perspective rulers to aid you in drawing your scenes. These perspective rulers are cool, and they're really powerful once you get the hang of setting them up. In fact, when I first saw a demonstration of them years ago is when I decided that I had to have this program, back when it was called Manga Studio 4. However, these rulers will not replace knowledge and practice in drawing perspective. If you don't know the principles of drawing in correct perspective, then these rulers will only aid you so much. A great resource for drawing in perspective is a book called Vanishing Point: Perspective for Comics by Jason Cheeseman Meyer. This book is full of tips and tricks and will help you understand perspective. The first video in this section will cover the 1-point perspective ruler. In this video, we are going to sketch out a 1-point perspective scene and then create a ruler that will help us flesh it all out in perfect perspective. Let's get started. To start off with, we need a canvas to draw on. I'm using an A4 size canvas at 350 dpi, but you can use whatever feels most comfortable to you. To start off, let's make a sketch of the scene we're going to draw. This is where a good base knowledge of perspective comes into play. For this one-point exercise, let's do the most basic of all perspective exercises, the road disappearing out to the horizon. We'll have some buildings on this side of the road. So I just rough everything in loosely. We're laying out a guide so that we know where to place our ruler in a moment. Once we have our basic layout done, we can make our perspective ruler. So let's go to Layer, Ruler Frame, Create Perspective Ruler. You can see that this box is where we'll select which type of perspective ruler we want to create. I always leave the Create New Layer box checked as well so I have a new layer to work on with my ruler. So we'll leave this on 1 point and we'll click on OK. So now we have this horizontal line, this is our horizon line, a vertical line, and 2 lines radiating out from the center. Where these lines meet is the vanishing point. When the perspective ruler was created, the Object Operation tool should have automatically been selected for you. We'll click on this ruler so that we can look at some of the options we have, and so we can move this ruler into the position we need it to be. First, let's talk about the horizon line. We've clicked on the ruler to make it our active selection, and now we can see a bunch of handles. By clicking on this green square, we can move the ruler around and set the horizon line where we want it to be in our drawing. Also, by using the little cross-shaped handles on the horizon line, we can rotate the line of this ruler. So you can have the horizon at an angle instead of being perfectly horizontal. So if you have a shot in your comic or illustration where the horizon isn't straight across, this is very handy. Let's say we did that and we actually want a perfectly straight horizon line instead of an angle. We can right-click on the horizon line on the PC and choose the Horizontalize Eye Level option from the menu that appears. This will move our line back to being a straight, flat horizon line. So once we have the horizon line where we want it, we can move the vanishing point as well. The vanishing point in my sketch is pretty centered, but if yours isn't, click on the blue circle, and you can move the vanishing point to wherever you need it to be. You may notice that the horizon line is moving around as well as we move the vanishing point. This can be stopped by right-clicking on the ruler, and then checking the Fix Eye Level option. This will lock the position of the horizon line when the vanishing point is being moved. Now once I have the vanishing point where I need it, I like to move the guide lines, which are these 2 lines that are radiating out from the vanishing point. I use these and line them up roughly with the important lines in my sketch, so that I can be sure I have the vanishing point and horizon line exactly where I want them. You can see here that I've positioned these guidelines along the side of the road and along the front of these buildings. Also, we can add more guides to a vanishing point if needed. First, select the vanishing point, then right-click, and select Add Guide from the menu. As you can see when we right-click, we can also add a vanishing point or delete a vanishing point. Perspective rulers really can be quite flexible, and this option has saved me a lot of work in the past when I've suddenly realized what I needed was actually a 2-point perspective ruler instead of a 1-point. The ability to add vanishing points on the fly means not having to make an entire ruler again from scratch. Another option you'll notice in our list of options for the vanishing point is the option to fix the vanishing point. This locks the point in place so that it can't be moved again until unlocked. Now that we have the perspective ruler adjusted the way we need it, we can start using it to draw. Select a drawing tool, and then ensure that the Snap to Special Ruler option in the command bar is turned on. Each of our lines will snap to the perspective ruler. As we draw, each of our lines will snap to the perspective ruler. That will allow us to draw lines parallel to the horizon line, such as this, lines that radiate back towards the vanishing point, such as the sides of our road, and vertical lines. Also, we can use the direct draw tools and have them snap to the perspective ruler. So, if we want to draw the side of a building quickly, we can select the rectangle direct draw tool and drag it out. It will automatically adjust to the vanishing point of this ruler. Once you have your sketch done, you may want to ink your scene. Let's make a new layer we can ink on. Now, when you created your new layer, your perspective ruler may not have been visible when you selected the new layer. Don't panic. If this happens, go back to the layer with the ruler linked to it. Here in the Layers palette, there is an icon for Set Showing Area of Ruler. Click on it to open the options. The active option is usually Show Only when editing target, which means the ruler will only show when the ruler's layer is active. But we can set it to show in all layers, meaning it will be visible and usable in all layers. Or we have the option to show only when in the same folder. So if you had a folder with your layers in it, then you would see this ruler so long as you were editing a layer in that same folder with this option on. Now we're on a layer above the layer we drew our sketch on, and we can start inking our background. As you can see, the lines will snap to our existing perspective ruler, but our ink lines are on a new layer. This drawing here is one example of the type of scene possible with a one-point perspective ruler and some patience. In this video, we have learned about using the one-point perspective ruler and some of the options that are available in all of the perspective rulers we're going to cover in this section. In the next video, we will create a two-point perspective ruler. See you there. Hi, and welcome back. In the previous video, we learned how to create, adjust, and use a one-point perspective ruler. In this video, we are going to learn how to use a two-point perspective ruler. This lesson builds off the information in the previous lesson, so be sure you've watched that lesson before proceeding with this one. Let's get started. So just as the previous video, we're going to start by making a rough sketch. Since we're doing a two-point perspective ruler, obviously we need to have two vanishing points in our sketch. I'm going to rough in a pretty common two-point perspective exercise, which is a view that looks like we're standing on a corner looking at a building from two sides. As you can see, in this sketch, one vanishing point will be on the left and one vanishing point will be on the right. Once we have our rough layout, it's time to go ahead and make our ruler so we can start more finished pencils. We'll find the option for two-point perspective rulers by going to Layer, Ruler Frame, Create Perspective Ruler. Now select the option for a two-point perspective ruler. Click on OK. Here we have our ruler, and we can see it's pretty much the same as the ruler we created in the previous video, except with a second vanishing point. Just as we did with the one-point perspective ruler, we need to move these vanishing points into place. Now, in order to do this, I'm going to have to zoom out to get my vanishing points to where they need to be. Thankfully, you can drag these vanishing points right off the canvas. So now I've got the left vanishing point just about where I want it, and now we'll do the same with the right. Alright, those guidelines look pretty good. Once our points are in position, we can start finalizing our drawing. Now, as you might see, sometimes when you go to make a line, it will snap to the wrong vanishing point. Sometimes you may just have to undo the line and try it again. For right there, I was trying to make a line that went back to the vanishing point, but instead got a vertical line. Just undo and try it again. Sometimes these perspective rulers can be a little bit hard to get a handle on, but with practice and patience, you'll be able to do it. This panel from my comic is an example of two-point perspective. You can see that one vanishing point is over here and one vanishing point is over here. But the drawing has been angled in such a way that we are looking down on the scene. In this video, we have learned how to create a two-point perspective ruler. In the next video, we will learn how to work with a three-point perspective ruler. See you there. Hi, and welcome back to Perspective Rulers. In the previous video, we created a scene using the two-point perspective ruler. In this video, we are going to learn how to set up a three-point perspective ruler. Working with a ruler with this many vanishing points can be a little tricky at times, but with practice and determination, you'll have them mastered in no time. Let's get started. So once more, we're going to rough out our scene. This is to give us an idea of where we'll need to put our vanishing points when we make our ruler. For this lesson, I'm going to sketch a floating box so that we're looking up at the underside of it, like this. Just as before, now that we have a rough idea of what we're drawing with this ruler, we can actually make the ruler. Go to Layer, Ruler Frame, and Create Perspective Ruler. Choose the three-point perspective ruler option and click on OK. Let's zoom out so we can get a full view of this ruler. Now, just like the other two rulers we've created in this section, we will position our vanishing points. Unlike the other two rulers we've created, this ruler has a free-floating vanishing point. You'll notice that this vanishing point is not sitting on the horizon line. You can position this point wherever is appropriate for the perspective scene that you're drawing. For this scene, I'm going to set the vanishing point up top. It can be a little tricky working with this many vanishing points, but just keep at it. Now that we have this ruler ready to go, we can start drawing. I find the 3-point perspective ruler to be the most likely to snap a line to the wrong vanishing point. If this happens to excess, you can always turn 1 or 2 vanishing points off. Now that we have our ruler ready to go, we can start drawing. Of course, sometimes the rough sketch is pretty off, but this is why we have perspective rulers, so that we can use them as a tool to complete our work. I find that the 3-point perspective ruler is the most likely to snap a line to the wrong vanishing point while drawing. If this is happening to excess, you can always turn 1 or 2 vanishing points off by selecting the Operation Object tool and clicking the diamond icon by the vanishing point. If this is happening to excess, you can always turn 1 or 2 vanishing points off by selecting the Operation Object tool, clicking on a vanishing point, and then clicking on the diamond icons by the guide. The guides for this vanishing point will change color, indicating that they are no longer active. Then you can complete your lines for the active vanishing points before turning the inactive one on again and completing the drawing. Also, if you were working on this drawing and decided you needed an extra vanishing point for some reason, right-click with the mouse while the Operation Object tool is active, and select Add Vanishing Point. This can turn a 2-point perspective ruler into a 3-point perspective ruler, or a 3-point perspective ruler into a 4-point perspective ruler. Sometimes you realize partway through drawing a scene that you need another vanishing point for added dynamics. This makes it so you don't have to redo the entire ruler. This frame from this comic page is an example of a 3-point perspective drawing done in Clip Studio Paint. As you can see, you can achieve a really nice look with some patience and attention to detail. Also, if I turn this perspective ruler layer on, you can see the ruler that made this drawing. In this section, we have learned about the different perspective rulers, from 1-point perspective all the way to 3-point perspective. In the next section, we're going to cover 3D objects. We'll learn how to add 3D objects to our page, as well as how to manipulate and pose the 3D objects. See you there. Hi, and welcome to the 3D Objects section. In this section, we will be learning about using 3D objects in Clip Studio Paint. Clip Studio Paint Pro and Clip Studio Paint EX both come with 3D objects in the materials library. These include poses, characters, objects, and even a classroom background. These 3D objects can be used in your projects. The way I use these 3D resources is mainly through using the poses and the generic dolls that look much like an art mannequin you can pick up in an art supply store. These 3D objects are great reference if you can't find a certain pose or don't have a live model to draw from. In this section, we're going to learn how to add the existing default 3D items onto a canvas from the materials library. Once we've done that, we will learn how to manipulate those objects, including moving and rotating them or posing a complicated object like a character. Then we will learn how to manipulate the camera in 3D space to further refine our scene. After that, we'll move on to adding preset poses to our characters and saving custom poses to the materials library for use over and over again. Then we will look at the character 3D models included with Clip Studio and learn how to customize them. In this first video, we will learn how to add a 3D object from the materials library. Adding an object from the materials library is the first step in working with 3D objects in this program. Let's get started. To start off with in this section, you'll need an open canvas, of course. Again, as with other sections, the size and DPI don't really matter because we're just going to use this canvas to learn about this subject, and then we can apply it to our other comics and illustrations. To start off, you'll need to open the materials library. The materials library may be open in your Clip Studio Paint interface already, but hidden. You may see a bar like this with arrows facing to the left, if you are using the default Clip Studio Paint interface. Click on the arrows to open the Materials library, like this. If you can't find the Materials library, go to Window, Material, and then Material 3D. This will navigate directly to the 3D category in the Materials library. If you opened the Materials library by clicking on the arrows in the interface, just open the 3D folder. Clicking on the 3D folder brings up every material file under this category. We can scroll down the list of previews or select a subcategory by clicking on the folder here. Let's select the character category and click on the Schoolgirl B02 character. When selected, the material will be highlighted. There are two ways to add this material onto our canvas. You can click on the icon at the bottom of the screen that looks like a clipboard. It's called the Paste Selected Material to Canvas icon. After clicking it, you'll see that our 3D character has been pasted onto our canvas. Depending on your computer's speed, it may take several minutes for the 3D object to paste into your canvas. You can also add the 3D object by clicking on the material to select it, then hold down the mouse button and drag to the canvas. The cursor icon will get a plus sign next to it. When this happens, release the mouse button, and the 3D material will be added to the canvas. Again, depending on your computer speed, this may take a few minutes. In this video, we have learned how to add 3D objects from the Materials library to the canvas. In the next video, we will learn how to manipulate 3D objects by moving individual points, rotating, and even moving them back and forth in 3D space. See you there. Hi there. In the previous video, we learned how to add 3D objects to our pages. In this video, we are going to learn how to manipulate those 3D objects. We'll not only be covering how to move them in 3D space and rotate them, but also how to move the individual parts of character models. Let's jump right in. So here we have another character model like we added to the canvas in the previous video. A character model makes a great demonstration for the concepts we're going to talk about in this lesson, but you can also manipulate the object and pose 3D models from the 3D Materials library. Now, of course, some models can only be manipulated in certain ways. For instance, the laptop 3D model can have the lid closed or opened, but the chair and desk models can't be changed to look like a different chair or desk. Characters and poses can be rotated and moved through the 3D space, as well as have their arms, legs, and other parts posed into place. Let's see how it's done. We'll be using the Operation Object tool for this. If the 3D object you're trying to move isn't selected already, click on it using the Object tool. A box appears around the selected model. You'll see that there's a line of icons here in the upper left corner. We're going to be using the 4 on the right in this video. We'll cover the ones on the left in the next video about the 3D camera. To move the entire object up, down, left, or right, hover the mouse cursor over the 4th icon in the top left corner of the selection box. Hold the mouse button down and drag to move the object to the new desired location. You can see here how the model moves as the cursor moves. To rotate the object along the y-axis, which is the horizontal, we're going to use the next icon over. It's the same procedure. Hover over the icon, click and hold down the mouse and drag to rotate the model. To rotate the model along the x-axis, which is the straight up and down, we'll use the 6 icon in the top bar, which is this one here. Again, it's the same process. We simply click and hold, and we can rotate the model to the left or to the right. Once we have the model where we want it, we can simply release the mouse button again. To move the entire object back and forth in 3D space, we'll use the 7th icon and the last one here along the top of the selection box. Again, we'll click and drag. If we move this way, the character goes back away from this camera view, or we can bring the 3D model closer. Now that we've talked about how to move the entire 3D model, we can talk about how to move the individual pieces of this model to pose it. Let's say we want to put this character's arm down at their side. First, we'll click on the upper arm portion of the character. When we have a part of the object selected that can be moved and rotated, this sphere with 3 lines circling it will appear. Each line is a different color and represents a different axis in 3D space and controls the rotation of that portion of the character along that axis. So, if we click and drag along this blue line, we move the character's arm on that axis. For more precise control, you can also use the mouse wheel, if your mouse has one. To use the scroll wheel to rotate, place the cursor over the axis to be rotated on and then move the scroll wheel. Also, some pieces of our 3D character can be moved faster by using the square yellow handles. For instance, if we click on the lower arm portion of the model, we'll see that there is a yellow square down here by the wrist. If we click and drag on that yellow square, we can move the arm around at the wrist. The rest of the model will follow as you move the handle though, unless you lock parts of the model. To lock the torso, let's select it and then right-click on the PC. When part of a model is locked, you will see a small blue box on that part of the model. So now we can move the arm and wrist without the torso moving. If you want to center the portion of the model you're working on in your view, simply click on it, and then select this icon from the bottom bar. Focus on Editing Target. Finally, let's talk about posing the hands. Posing a 3D model exactly the way we want it can be tedious, especially if we want to pose the hands and fingers. Maybe our character is carrying something or making a gesture. We could go through and rotate and move every finger joint until we got the perfect pose, but there is an easier way. Let's open the Subtool Detail palette, just like we did way back in the first section of this course when we were making custom brushes. Click on the Pose menu option on the left-hand side. Now let's click on this hand to make it active. At the bottom of this menu we have some preset positions. But we can also make a custom hand pose. By clicking and dragging in the triangle over the blue hand graphic, we can control how open and closed the fingers are. And we can control how spread apart or how close together the fingers are. The chain links above each finger lock that finger into place, protecting it from any additional editing until it's unlocked. If you want to start over with your hand pose, simply click on the Initial Pose button at the top of the menu. Let's close the Subtool Detail palette and select our character model again. If you made changes to this 3D model's pose and don't like the changes, there is a way to revert the model back to the initial pose, just like in the hand menu we looked at. It is down here in the bottom command bar. Click on it and the model will revert back to its original pose. In this video, we have learned several different ways to manipulate a 3D model in Clip Studio Paint's 3D space. In the next video, we will learn how to move the 3D camera to achieve dynamic angles on our models. See you there. Hi, welcome back to our course. In the previous video, we learned about the different ways to move our 3D models around in space. In this video, we are going to learn how to move our 3D camera. Let's jump right in. Once again, we'll start with our canvas that has our 3D model added to it already from our first video in this section. Moving the 3D camera is just as easy as moving our model around. For these movements, we're going to use the first three icons in our command bar at the top of our model. If you don't see these icons, you may need to select the Operation Object tool and click the model to make it active. To rotate the camera around an object and have the object remain stationary, we'll use the first icon here, which looks like a little video camera with two curved arrows around it. The process is the same as when we moved the model around in the previous video. Simply click and drag over the icon. Now you may be wondering how to tell if you've rotated the character or the camera. To figure this out, simply look at the checkerboard underneath the model. This is called the ground plane. If the character is still standing on the ground plane instead of pushed through it or hovering over it, then the camera was moved. You can see as this camera is rotated that the ground plane stays in perspective with the character. This is because we're not moving the model, but rather moving what position we are viewing the model from. This becomes especially important when doing scenes involving more than one 3D model. To move the camera up, down, left, or right, we'll click and drag on the second icon in our top bar here. We can move the camera back and forth in the 3D space as well to get closer to or further away from our model. Use the third icon for this. Hover over it and then click and drag, just as with other icons, to move the camera closer or further away. Moving the camera to just the right spot can be tricky and time-consuming. Thankfully, there is a shortcut to getting just the right angle on our 3D model. Along the bottom command bar, we have an icon for Specify Camera Angle from Preset. If we click on it, we'll see simple drawings of pre-programmed camera angles we can choose from. If we click on one, the camera will automatically be moved to that position. This can be used to quickly move the camera into an angle, and then we can use the other camera movement icons to refine our view. This can save a lot of time when working with 3D models. In this video, we have learned how to move the 3D camera. In the next video, we will learn how to use preset character poses and how to save a custom pose to the materials library. See you there. Hi, and welcome back. In the previous video, we learned how to move the camera in our 3D scenes. In this video, we are going to apply a preset pose to a character model and learn how to save a pose to the materials library so it can be used again on a different character model. Let's get started. First of all, let's open up the pose folder in the materials library. You'll find it here. Click on the arrow to the left of the folder name to open the subfolders, or click on the top folder to see everything in that category. We're going to go to the entire body folder. Now we can scroll down and look through all the available poses. As you can see, there's a lot that come with Clip Studio Paint's materials. Each pose has a preview image that shows you what it looks like. As you can see, at the bottom of my materials library are a few items that don't have a preview image. This is because they're custom poses that I've saved to my library. We're going to go over how to do that in a moment. Let's choose a pose to put our school character model in. We'll choose this one here, P Soccer 02. Click on it to highlight the pose and make it the active selection. Now, just like when we added our character model to the canvas in the first video, we're going to click and hold down the mouse button to drag the pose over on top of the model. The cursor will get a plus sign next to it when it's in the right spot. Once this happens, simply release the mouse button and the model will change into the new pose automatically. Preset poses may need to be adjusted slightly to accommodate the character model, if you're using one. This pose seems to fit this character model pretty well. We can also use these poses without a character model. This is the way that I usually use 3D models in my work, as a generic reference for the pose that I want to draw. Let's say we wanted to draw the character in this pose, and we just need the body for reference. We can select the pose and add it to the canvas just as we would a character or object model. This will show us a generic drawing doll type pose that can be used as reference. We can also save a custom pose into the materials library to apply to character models or to use as reference over and over again. For instance, I have this pose that I made using the methods discussed in the second video of this course. Let's save this pose to the materials library. Make sure that the figure to be saved is the currently active selection. In the menu bar below the 3D model, we'll click on Register Pose to Material Palette, which looks like a silhouette of a person with a save icon behind it. Our familiar material property menu will come up. Let's name the pose with something memorable. Then we'll select the pose entire body category to save it in. Finally, we'll add a few tags. Now we can click on OK. So now if we go to our other character model and open up our pose library, you can see that our custom pose is right here. We can use the same method and drag and drop onto this other character model. And they will move according to the saved information from the materials library. In this video, we have learned how to use the poses from the materials library and how to add our own poses to the library. In the next video, we will learn how to customize the character and pose models. See you there! Hello, and welcome to the last video of our course. In the previous video, we learned how to use and save poses. In this video, we are going to learn how to customize both the character models and the generic body type models. Let's jump right in and get started. We're going to start with our schoolgirl character model again. The character models that come with Clip Studio Paint have some customization options that come with them, which is handy if you're using them as characters in a 3D comic perhaps. We have our model selected, so let's look down here at the control bar at the bottom of the selection. Here on the right-hand side, we will find the options for customizing any of the character models. The first icon is to select the face of the character. When we click on it, we can see any of the face options for this character. It only has one, so we can't choose another one. The next icon is for the facial expressions of the character. Let's select this expression for our character. As we can see, the facial expression on the character changes to our selection. This icon allows us to change the hair of this character model. Each hairstyle has a name and preview to make selection easy. Let's choose an updo and see how that looks. The next icon on the bottom bar allows us to see clothing options for this character. And the final icon will show us any additional customization options, such as bangs, animal ears, and ponytails and bows. These allow us to further customize the character. However, be careful with your selections. Selecting bangs 01 and then selecting bangs 02 will overlap the selections one on top of each other instead of displaying them one at a time. So keep this in mind when going through the options to see how they look. The generic male and female dolls can also be customized, though they don't have face and clothing options obviously. However, we can change the body shape in several different ways. To make quick changes, we can use this option here in the bottom bar under the generic doll called Adjust Body Shape and Size of 3D Figure briefly. Clicking this option brings up 4 squares and a slider. Each square is marked with a descriptor: slim, kid, overweight, and sensual. The amount of each proportion can be controlled by dragging the black box around. For instance, to create a doll with childlike proportions, we can drag the box straight up to the top of the kid section. Moving the controller left and right into the slim or overweight options changes the model. These controls are simple but easy and quick to use. The slider on the side controls the height of the character model. For more fine control that's still easy to use, we can click on the Adjust Body Shape and Size of 3D Figure in Detail icon, which is to the right of the icon we just used. We have our same 4 descriptors, but now we can mix all 4 in whatever proportions we want. If even that isn't enough control, then we can click on the final icon. These sliders give us control over the size of every part of our generic doll. Simply adjust the sliders to change the parameters of the listed body part. This method offers the most control. In this section, we have learned about using the 3D aspects of Clip Studio Paint. We started off by adding a 3D model to our canvas. Then we learned how to manipulate our models and the 3D camera by changing their position and rotation. Then we learned how to use preset pose information to pose characters quickly and how to save our custom poses to the materials library. Finally, we learned how to customize character models and the generic body type figures. We have now finished this course, and what a journey it has been. We started off by learning how to create custom brushes and how to use layer masks. Then we explored using vectors in our work. Then we learned about the ruler tools, including basic rulers and then moving into the perspective rulers. Finally, we learned about the 3D aspects of Clip Studio Paint and how to use them in our work. I hope that this course has helped with your Clip Studio Paint projects, and that you are now inspired to go out and create comics and illustrations using these techniques to help you in your work. Thank you for watching this course.